Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 417.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because I know there's a number of you who maybe you grew up thinking, I know, I'll go to school, get good grades, get a job, and I'll follow that mantra because it clearly works. And yet there's also a number of you who have found out how well it doesn't. In fact, you found out a while ago that's why you listen, and you have been trying to make that transition. Well, I have with me today an individual who has managed to make that transition that you are also looking to do so. But what I find very interesting was his prior background. What do you mean, Jay? Well, he was a police officer, but that's interesting and that's good. And that means he's definitely got a heart to serve people. But what I like knowing is that he was willing to work 90-hour weeks to save up money for down payments. He put in more time to make it happen. And that's what I think begins to make him special. Today, he's a real estate agent up in Northern California, proving that there are some real estate agents out there that you can work with. And what's more important to that is that he's living on this cash flow. And what's exciting is he's here to share with you and I how he does it. So help me welcome none other than David Greene. David, you there?
Yep. Thank you very much, Jay. That was a great intro.
Thank you. I'm glad that you are here, and thank you for going out there and making stuff happen. Now, with this being your first time here, I tend to ask everybody the same question the first time that they're here. So you ready?
Yes.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them is that occasionally as entrepreneurs, we can vision ourselves flying around town and saving people in capes and tights, etc. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about like Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a college kid, going to school, doing his own thing, taking some photos for the newspaper, making sure he had some money so he could eat. And then one day he gets bit by this spider, and suddenly he discovers he's got this new ability that he gets to use for good and or evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before, you were working those 90-hour weeks, before you bought properties in multiple different states, before you did notes, before the note funds, before all the things that people know you for today, even before being a police officer, what we want to know is, who is David Greene?
That's a really good question, Jay. I like that. So before I was doing any of the stuff that I'm into now, I was a basketball fiend. I loved everything about basketball.
Nice.
It was my first love. It was eat, drink, breathe basketball. And that's kind of where I laid the foundation for what made me successful later. I wasn't the most athletic. I didn't run the fastest. I didn't jump the highest. I mean, I was fine. I was athletic, but it wasn't going to get me to the next level where I wanted to be. In order for me to kind of make, a varsity team in high school or establish myself as a legitimate contender, I had to work really, really hard at improving the things that I lacked naturally. And through falling in love with basketball and putting the work into basketball, I eventually got to the point where my mind figured out that if I work really hard at something, I will get better. Just, like if you go to the gym enough and you do enough cardio, the pounds will come off. If you work on your skill set for long enough, it's kind of like, sharpening an axe. It's going to get sharper and you're going to get better. And once I figured out that, it really opened up a lot of doors for me to go into lots of different things with that confidence that it may be hard at first, but if I keep working at it, I'll get better and I'll figure it out.
Interesting. I like this. So are you actually trying to tell me that work ethic is more important than talent?
I would say sometimes talent can be a hindrance, because I know a lot of those guys that were naturally good and didn't have to work as hard as I did, I caught up with, and then I passed up as far as our actual skill set on a basketball floor. Because when you're relying on work ethic, the sky's the limit. When you're relying on talent, it's only going to take you as far as you're naturally able to go.
Yep, I would agree with that a lot. Now, you mentioned this word, you've said it twice, is skill sets. What would you say, those skill sets that maybe you've transferred from the basketball court? Because we've got to get from the basketball court over to real estate. So it sounds like something happened. What was that transition like, and what's carried over?
So I would say that what helped me to really improve myself on the basketball court was learning, first of all, the fundamentals of basketball. Everybody sees the person that can jump in the air and do a 360 and dunk, and they say, I want to be that guy.
But that's fun, by the way, if you've not done it. I'm just letting you know.
No, I never was able to do that. I wanted to be that guy too. It just wasn't an option for me. Right.
But, I understood.
But as I came to study the game, I found that the guys who were winners were the ones who set really good screens, who played really good defense, who boxed out on every rebound. They did the little things that are not noticeable or flashy or fun, and it made them really good players, and it made their team really good. The things that we necessarily notice right off the bat aren't always the things that are going to make you successful in the long run. And I found that to be true in a lot of wealth making ways. I mean, there's a lot of people that are attracted to that guy on Instagram with the really flashy video of the Lamborghinis and, the Caribbean cruise that he's on, and the girls in bikinis that all want him so bad. And they think, well, I got to do what that person does if I want to be successful. It's like watching the slam dunk contest. You can see some really cool dunks, but some of these guys are bench players that are doing it, that they're not actually contributing to the success of their team because they're not contributing in other ways. And I found that, you can build wealth no matter who you are if you learn the fundamentals of how money works and get really good at a certain thing. For me, it became real estate investing, and then everything will just take care of itself.
So you mentioned the idea and the concept of fundamentals, and I totally agree with that. Being a basketball guy myself, I mean, you're not going to get very far until you learn how to dribble that ball. You got to be able to do that. So what would you say has been the fundamental thing that has helped you make the transition from police officer full-time to entrepreneur real estate investor?
I think that for me, what helped me succeed at levels where other people didn't is that I really wanted to understand whatever the thing is I was working on at a deep level. Most people in life that I find, they work hard until they get to a point where they can do the thing and then they stop. So if you find a guy who gets good enough to make the team and he can run fast and he can jump high, that's probably what he's going to rely on, and that's as far as he's going to go, is where that'll take him. When he comes across other guys that run just as fast and jump just as high, but he hasn't worked on ball handling, he hasn't worked on shooting, he can't dribble with his head up to see other players on the floor, he can't do all the other things that are needed, he kind of gets passed up by his competition. I was always trying to become the best version of me that I could be on a basketball floor, and then I took that into police work, and then I took that into real estate investing. So I don't just know enough to get by. I want to learn all of it. I want to know why what I'm doing works, not just what do I have to do that works. And I found that, once you developed a skill set like that, where you have a deep knowledge base of what it takes to be successful, why it works for you, why it's not working for your competition, you can take that into lots of different things. So for instance, I learned kind of the X's and O's of how real estate work through becoming an investor. Now that I'm a real estate agent, I can analyze properties a tenth of the time that some other agent. I can look up exactly what my clients' budgets are going to be in a matter of seconds on my phone, where another agent would have to refer them to a lender because they don't know how that works. I can help find the diamond in the rough because I'm looking at the market through an investor's eyes, where we're trying to find that deal that everybody is missing. I can take that and I can make it work for my clients, where the real estate, they can't. They can walk through your house. They can say, "Don't you just love the kitchen?" And that's about as much as they can offer. Definitely, when you put the time into understanding how something works instead of just learning enough to be able to do a layup and thinking that makes you, a good candidate to go out and play in the game.
Yeah, totally get that. That's so funny. Doesn't the kitchen? But look at the granite countertops. All right, so and I hear exactly what you're talking about there, because there is a minimum level of competency that you must reach. But you're talking about mastery and things that are not necessarily taught in any formal sense of education. Where does this desire to be masterful for you come from? All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. One of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, there's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/CashFlowDiary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just a number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/CashFlowDiary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
So I think that the desire for mastery came from a fear of missing out. I was really afraid that I wasn't going to make the team the next year, even though I had made it this year. And it forced me to apply myself throughout the whole off season, throughout the season, to getting to be as good as I could be, because I was always afraid if I miss one workout, if I miss one clinic, if I miss one day, what if that's the difference between me and the other guy making the team? And it kind of this desire to, you got to become the best version of you if you don't want to have any regret. If I was to look back and say, you know what, I would have made the team if I had only done this one little thing and I missed out on the entire season, and really the whole course of my life would have changed because I didn't work my hardest, it would have been devastating. So I think that's where the foundation kind of got laid. And then as I improved and I got to see that, the better I become at this game of basketball, the more fun it becomes. And then the more doors that it opens for me. And then the better kind of athlete I can, and the more respect I get from people. And the whole thing started to just kind of build up my confidence, where it doesn't matter where you can determine where you go if you're committed to being the best. And I think that, I sort of built on that, kind of layer after layer with the different things that I came across in life. My first jobs was as a waiter in a restaurant, and I applied that same work ethic, and I got to be, a bus boy. Then I got really quick, and then I got to be the top waiter. And then I got to be the waiter who got to handle all the partying. So I found myself making a lot of money, and then I was able to save money. So when I graduated college, I had $90,000 in the bank, and my car paid for, and college paid for, all because I had applied myself really hard as a waiter.
Whoa.
I started to see,
hold on 1 second. Did you say you finished college with $90,000 in the bank, college paid for, and the car paid for?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think someone just said, how much was college? Was it free? They're trying to understand that thought process, because that's a skill set in and of itself.
College wasn't free. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, so I wasn't going to try to get into Stanford and pay $50,000 a year of what career I wanted. I wanted a return on the investment I was making, both in my time and in my money, into going to college. So I went to a junior college for the first 2 years, and I paid cheap rates for the classes to get all my general ed done. And when I'd taken all of those, I went to the cheapest four-year school I could find and figured, well, maybe I'll figure it out when I'm here. if I don't have to. And then I just lived with mom and dad. I commuted to school about 45 minutes, and then I commuted in the other direction about 50 minutes to get to the restaurant that I was working at. And I was able to save quite a bit of money.
I love it. Okay, this is completely different. I like it. So now what I did find interesting is the beginning, the genesis of that motivation, the whole fear of not making the team. But yet the desire to be masterful hasn't changed, and I don't think it's about not making the team anymore. So what drove the mastery, say, when you wanted to be the police officer? I mean, you're on the team, but so it's got to be something else after that.
You're exactly right. I think if I ask myself that question, I look at the fear was kind of like the battery that jumpstarts a car and gets it going. But then once I was moving and I had some momentum going, and I started to see that going fast is fun, and going fast is what a car was meant to do. I didn't need the battery to jumpstart me anymore. Now maybe the alternator kicks in, and that's what's sustaining me. And I got that. I can be anything, and I can do anything if I believe that I can, and if I put in the work. And then it became a question of, well, how far can I go, right? So when I became a police officer, I wanted to do everything there was as a cop. I wanted to be on every special assignment. I wanted to do every job. I wanted to know every law, to write more citations than the next guy. I wanted to make more good arrests than the next guy. It became like a game, right? So now I'm not on a basketball team, so I don't have that itch to scratch. And this became like my sport. And the score became, how much production can I make for the department? And then as I did that, I got really good at all the things that make you a good cop. Then I started teaching other people. I became an instructor and teaching all of them, these are the things that you do to be good. And that opened up more doors, right? Because now I'm starting to realize that, I think I've heard it said 90% of what you teach, you'll actually learn yourself. It's a way to kind of create mastery is by teaching other people what you're doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of confidence came from that. I had very low self-esteem when I was young, and now I'm at a point where I'm teaching other police officers how to be police officers, and I'm considered, an expert within my department. And it was just one more example of, if you work hard, you can have these really cool doors open to you that you never would have thought you could.
Yeah, I totally get that. Now, you've mentioned a lot, working hard. You've mentioned a lot, putting in the time, the effort, the energy, the hours, the blood, the sweat, the tears. I'm curious as to what you think of when you hear of stories today where individuals, just because they're on the team, everybody gets on. First of all, if you go to tryout, everybody gets on the team. And if one person gets a ribbon, everybody gets a ribbon. How do you think that would have affected or affects work ethic as it relates to making life happen?
See that, that's a hot button topic right now. There's a lot of people that talk about what you just said, as part of the entitlement generation and millennials and stuff. And I think that it's actually heartbreaking, because if it wasn't for my fear of getting cut or not being the best, or when I became really good, the fear of losing, I didn't want to lose games to teams that I felt I was better than, I wouldn't have developed the ability to learn, I guess you could say, right? Like we talked about skill sets and developing a skill set in different things so that you become the best. But being able to develop a skill set is kind of a skill set itself. Once you start to find the patterns in life that make you successful, you can apply them to a lot of different things. You can apply them to working out, to saving money, to investing money, to developing really good friendships, to making a really great podcast, that kind of stuff. That all came from the fact that I didn't want to miss out on that trophy, or I didn't want to get cut from the team. And when we're just handing these things out that makes them meaningless, you're robbing people of the basic human emotion of fear of missing out, which is a very powerful motivator if you harness it for your own good.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, you did something again, out of all the stuff that you did in your bio, the thing that sticks out to me is you were willing to do 90-hour weeks. So
right.
That's a motivation from somewhere else. I mean, you're already a successful police officer. You're being looked up to in the department, but yet you decide that, hey, I want to do even more in a completely different field, and you're willing to sacrifice the extra time. Where did that come from? Why was that necessary?
So the stuff we've talked about so far, the motivation was kind of the stick, right? So I'm afraid that this bad thing, failure, is going to catch me. So I'm running really fast to get away from it. Well, when I started working a lot of hours as a police officer, the motivation kind of became a carrot. I got a little taste of how real estate investing worked and how powerful it was to create wealth. And I realized I got to do whatever I have to do to be able to be a part of that. And when I looked at my life, I said, what can I do to make more money? I didn't go to school to be a doctor. I didn't go to school to run a hedge fund. I'm a police officer. And the only way to make more money as a police officer is to be at work more. So I had to kind of get creative with my schedule and find ways to stack as many hours of work as I could in a day, make sure I got enough sleep that, I could stay awake for the day, and then go right back and do it again. And then it became a game of, okay, how can I put shifts together in a creative way so that rather than working a 12-hour shift and getting, one day where I work 10 and then the next day I go back and work 12, maybe I could stack them up to where I could work 20 in a day to have enough time to sleep and then come back and work 20 the next day, and trying to see how many hours can I do in a week? How many hours can I do in a month? How can I put these hours together in the most efficient way so that I could make as much money as I could? Because I knew every dollar that I made as a police officer would become $10 in 5 or 10 years after I invested in real estate investing.
Got it. Is there anything that doesn't become a game or strategy for you right now?
Well, maybe later in life that won't be the case, but I think I'm still at the point where, looking at life from a perspective of if you're not doing best, you might miss out on something. And in order to keep it interesting, I kind of had to make it a game. How much money can I save while I'm in school? Can I get to $100,000 in 4 years? How many hours can I work? Can I say that I'm really giving my best if that's my goal? So I never wanted to do that for my whole life, because I know your listeners are going to hear this and say, I'm not working 90 hours a week for the rest of my life. I want to enjoy my time. And I agree. You should not do that, right? But for a period of time when the economy was in a recession and real estate investing was a great opportunity, and I had the overtime to work, I don't have a family, I don't have kids, I don't have other people that I have to hold myself responsible to, it made a lot of sense to just go at a dead sprint until I was too exhausted to run. And I wanted to know that I'd kind of left it all on the floor. Yeah, I get that. I get that 100%. So talk to us about that exit strategy, that moment. It's that moment where, you're cutting that tie. I mean, for a lot of people, they have a job of some kind and they want to be where you are. Yet that the concern about leaving the familiar behind can sometimes grab them and arrest their ability to actually keep moving forward. So where did the courage come from to cut that tie? I think you have to look at your own past and ask yourself what you've done in the past that you did well at, and then ask yourself why you did well, right? So there's a story in the Bible of when David was young and he was a shepherd, and it says that he went after a lion that took one of the sheep that he was in charge of, and he was able to take it back from the lion's mouth. And then the same thing happened to a bear. So by the time he got to Goliath, he had kind of already been taking these steps of, I didn't think I was capable of this. And then I went out there and did anyways and built up his confidence. So when Goliath came along, when we look at that story, we're like, why would he have ever thought he could do it? But for him, he's like, hey, I've done this before. This is nothing different. And whether you're religious or not, I think that there's a truth to the fact that you shouldn't try to do it all in one step. It's a manner of small steps that you build on one after the other to build up your own confidence, build up your own skill set, and kind of cut back on some of those self-limiting beliefs you have that put you in a position that you can finally walk away from your job and say, you know what, this is the thing I want to do and I'm going to go at it. For me, as we've talked about briefly, I'm walking away from being a police officer and now I'm getting into being a full-time real estate agent. And it was a huge struggle as I wondered, am I making a huge mistake? This is not guaranteed money. I don't know if I'm going to be as successful at this as I was at, investing. And it's tough. Every day I have to develop myself in a new way that I wasn't good at before. Being a real estate agent, you got to be a lot more personable. You have to help break down people's walls. You have to talk to people you don't know. Being a police officer, I didn't have to do any of that. You kind of go in there and you set the tone for how things are going to go. And it was easy. Now I'm working out a muscle that I haven't worked out in almost my whole life. And it's tough, but I have the confidence to do it because I know I've done this in other areas And I trust that process that if I work hard, I'll figure it out and get good at it.
Well, and that's what I want to talk about, because I like the way you put that when you're saying you're working out a muscle that I don't think I've worked out in my whole life.
Right.
And that's true, I think, for everyone's entrepreneurial experience to some degree. I mean, every day you wake up, there's the possibility of something that is looming and large right in front of you that you've never handled before, but now you're being asked to handle it. And it's not like, well, let me work up to that. No, the problem needs to be solved today, and the buck stops with you. Now, I'm curious to know, what would you say as a police officer prepared you for being an entrepreneur?
Oh, man. As a police officer, you don't know what you're going to get when you get to the call. You get told there's some argument going on, you need to go. You don't know why they're arguing. You don't know how they know each other, if they do. You don't know what background these people have. You don't know anything about it. You get there and you have to figure out very quickly what's the motivation for this argument, what's the relationship between these people, what's the problem they're having, and how can I solve it, right? A lot of people, you watch a lot of TV and you think cops just show up, guns blazing, and that's not the way. It's not the way it works almost all the time. I mean, almost never does that happen. Most of the time, you're playing counselor, you're playing confidant, you're playing lawyer, you're playing mediator, and you're playing referee. You have to get kind of good at a little bit of everything to be able to solve problems. That's what you're doing. There's a problem that these people cannot solve themselves, so someone has called 911 and you got to come solve it. And as an entrepreneur, it's very, very similar. It doesn't really matter what your field is or what your business is. You're solving a problem for somebody somewhere in a way that your skill set can do better than the next guy. And that's why you believe that you should be doing what you're doing. And I think once I started to look at life through that lens, and I started to trust my own problem-solving ability, that's when I got the confidence to step out and put myself in the field of a real estate agent, even though my personality maybe wasn't polished up enough to where it would be easy.
Be easy? You didn't really think it was going to be easy, did you?
Well, I mean, like most, I would prefer it to be so, but if it was easy, it would be hard to be an entrepreneur because everybody would be out doing it.
Yes. I love the idea how we can delude ourselves into thinking, oh, I got this. And then we get there like, what was I thinking? It happens all the time. So, well, you've managed to now purchase properties in multiple different states. So, and you've tried a couple of different strategies, etc. Do you have a favorite now?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely have a favorite. My buddy Brandon Turner coined this phrase, the Bur Strategy, and it basically stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So what I was doing before is I was working crazy hours to save up, 30, 40 grand. And I'd go put a down payment on a house, and I would earn me some cash flow, and I'd go right back to scratch and start working like a crazy man to try to save up the next 30 or 40 grand. And it was incredibly slow, and it was rewarding in the sense that you saw your hard work paying off, but it was like a lumberjack with a very dull axe that didn't take time to sharpen it. And he just said, you know what, I'm just going to chop harder than all the other lumberjacks, and I'll knock down trees. And it worked, but I didn't knock down nearly as many as my potential should have allowed me to. And now, basically, when I went through that dead sprint of being a police officer, I talked about working, 90 hours a week for a couple of years in a row. It was to save up a nice little nest egg so that I could go buy properties for cash, and then I could refinance later and pull the money out. And the reason why that's a better strategy is that when you buy a house, let's say I bought a house for $100,000 and it's worth $100,000, and I put $25,000 down. That $25,000 in equity, that would be that's money's gone. So I'm never going to get that back until either I sell the house or I refinance it or something like that. And it takes a long time to save that up. If I go buy a house for $80,000 that needs quite a bit of work, so I spend 80 grand and then I put 20,000 down, and now maybe the house is worth 120 or 130. When I go to refinance it, I'm not pulling 25%. I'm not putting down 25% of the 100,000. The bank will let me pull out 75% of the 120,000, right? So now I'm getting almost all of that initial investment back, and I still have a cash flowing property. That allowed me to buy several at a time and not have to work crazy hours in the meantime to be able to afford it.
Got it. Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So, when you were getting started now and leveraging your strategies, what's the plan for the future look like in terms of either volume or types of houses, etc.? What's next?
So last year I bought 10 houses out of state, and this year the goal was to buy 24. I wanted to buy 2 houses a month, rehab them, pull the money out, and rent them out. I ended up becoming a full-time agent this year because business was better than I thought it would be. So that's kind of pulled me away from my goal of just buying the rental properties. But what it's done is it's opened up doors to where I can make a lot more cash without having to work 20 hours a day. And I can still be around real estate to where I can continue to make contacts in the investing world, analyze properties, talk to banks. I can be awake during business hours instead of graveyard hours, which helps me quite a bit. And if I do this right, I'm going to have a really nice synergy between making money as a real estate agent by helping people to buy and sell houses with the skill set I've developed from investing, and then reinvesting that money into my own investing business, and I'll be able to have both.
Yes, totally get that. So for those that have been, listening this far and like the message that you have to share, what's going to be the best way for them to find out more about what you have going on?
So I run a blog where I teach people how to create wealth through real estate investing called greenincome.com. There's an E at the end of green, so it's GREENEINCOME.com. And then I always love when people add me on Facebook. I'm David Greene 24 on Facebook.
Got it. So as we wind down here, I've got one more question for you, and I'm just kind of curious to hear your answer. And let's pretend for a second that there's a person listening who's standing in front of what I would call the superhero outfit store. They think they're going to actually become an entrepreneur. They're ready to pick out their outfit, their tights, their cape, their mask. They are going to do this thing. Now, as would have it, often when we make decisions like this, there's a little companion that comes along with that, and that's usually in the form of a voice, and it's in the back of our head, and it's always telling us what we can't do, why it won't work, and for some people, they are related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that person's actually going to follow through and do this time. They're going to make it happen, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
That's such a good question, Jay. I love the way you phrased that. You're really good at this. I would say that based on my experience, this is a great question for when I decided to get my license and become a realtor. I actually jumped in, didn't like how it went, and jumped out. And for the next 6 months, I didn't do anything as a real estate agent at all. I just said, you know what, that was horrible. I don't like it. And I didn't get back in until I had a buddy came to me and said, hey, can you sell my house? And I said, sure. And then realized I don't know what to do. I have to go into the office and figure this out. Right? What helped me more than anything was creating relationships with the real estate agents that were in the office that knew how to do it. And for them, it was easy. And that wasn't very hard either, because all I had to do was hang around the people in the office and listen to the things they complained about and look for a way that I could help them with it. So there was one really good real estate agent here who was saying that she hates putting out her open house signs. It's just kind of her pet peeve. We all have something we hate doing. For some people, it's dishes, right? For this realtor, she hated getting out of her car and putting out the open house sign, getting in, driving down the road, doing the same thing again. And I said, hey, when's your open house? I'll put out the signs for you. And she's like, really? You'll do that? I said, absolutely. I'll be there. So then, I heard another realtor complaining, oh, I hate that I constantly have to log into the computer when my client wants something and look it up, and sometimes I'm not there. I said, send me a message with what you need. I'll look it up for you and send it right away. Little tiny things like that sort of endeared my coworkers to me and made them like me. So then when I didn't know what to do, when I'm staring at that superhero outfit and I'm trying to figure out, am I actually going to buy this thing and put it on? I knew I had a team of Avengers around me that I could ask them, how do you do this thing, right? I'm new at being a superhero. And usually the answers are really simple when someone gives them to you. It's a little bit harder when you have to go find it yourself. That's what I would encourage other entrepreneurs to do. You got to find people that are already doing what you want, that are good at it, that are good people, and do something to bring value to them. And everyone has that pet peeve thing they hate. Just be the guy that does it. I didn't care about putting out open house signs, so I was fine to go do it. Look at how much that paid off for me. That agent's helped me with probably 8 or 9 transactions that I never would have been able to do if it wasn't for her. And that's, a year's worth of salary for some people.
Yes, well said, and I love it. And I definitely appreciate your, not only the message, but the understanding that there's a process to developing into the person that can ultimately receive the benefits that we all desire and want for ourselves. And I thank you for taking the time to invest your knowledge, your insight, as well as your wisdom here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
I appreciate it, Jay. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? Get over to greenincome.com. You know you like the name. I did. So go find out more. Make that happen. Take that next step. Begin that process to becoming the best version of yourself that you can be. Because you know what? It starts today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.